Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this fireside discussion on the topic of youth banking, which is something that RFI Group's been doing a lot of research on in the last couple of months. It's something that banks are talking about. We're thinking about the years to come. What's the role of young people in the market and how are they going to shape banking relationships, the way they save money, the way they make payments. So it's a really, really interesting space. And we're lucky enough to actually have Dom Pym here, who you'll know is the co-founder of UP. And I'll hand over to Dom to talk a little bit more about himself and just give you a proper introduction. But really, really lucky to have to be here with him today. So really looking forward to this discussion. So Dom, did you want to introduce yourself a little bit more and just tell us about your interest in the youth banking topic and give a bit of background into what UP's been doing lately?
No worries. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, it's great to be here. UP has sort of, in some ways, taken the market by storm, with the sort of innovation and disruption that we've seen, with the banking licenses, the restricted banking licenses and the neobanks, the challenger banks and so on. So I was fortunate to be working with Bendigo Bank. My company, Ferocia, was working with Bendigo Bank for about a decade. I think at the time we'd been working together 6 years. And just before that disruption started to happen, we had the opportunity to build a relationship and say, right, well, we want to be part of that. So we were the first of the next generation digital banks. UP was the first of the next generation digital banks to launch in Australia. And we've gone from nothing in a few years to 500,000 customers. Actually, I think it's 425,000, so we're approaching 500. Billions and billions in transactions and tens of billions in transactions and so on. So my role as the founder has been, to pull the team together, to be passionate about it, to help pull the strategy and product together. So I've also tried to embed myself in the industry, and that's why I'm here chatting with you guys. But participating in Startup Vic and Fintech Australia and StartMate and Startup Bootcamp and just stuff like that, so that I can be part of the community and part of that disruption. So that's sort of me and my background. And UP itself now is headed up by Xavier Shea. He's our CEO. And we announced as part of the Bendigo Bank acquisition that Xav is the CEO. He'd actually been doing it for about 18 months. We just hadn't told anyone. We never really had a CEO before that. So UP has sort of come from nothing to be a reasonably recognized brand amongst a regionally niche group of customers, but we're growing fast, and predominantly about 50% of our customers are aged between 16 and 25. So very young customer base.
And that leads really nicely into, I think, what we're going to be talking about today when thinking about where UP is sitting in the market and the opportunity for growth. And I'll share some RFI data as we go through. But I think just thinking about banking and how young people feel about banking, RFI data shows that young Australians are more likely to indicate that they trust banks to keep their money safe, but less likely to feel that banks are interested in them as individuals. So they trust them to, their money is safe and secure, but they don't feel that banks necessarily see them as individuals. So what do you think banks can do to make sure young people, or to make young people feel that they're not just a sales opportunity or, just another number? How can they sort of be feeling like they're an individual person with unique needs and goals and aspirations?
It's actually a very hard problem to solve because any organisation, not just banking, but large enterprises, are set up as that sort of sales funnel, the way we used to think about it. So none of us are bankers. Like we've all come from outside the banking sector. We're all software engineering, product design, technology people. And we've come in with a different mindset to really disrupt it. So I would say that the first part of that to me is actually just do it. Don't talk about the customer being the customer and being at the center of what you do and all that sort of stuff. It has to manifest in action. It has to actually be that the customer is forefront of the mind. And so that's been easier for us, I guess, in developing something new rather than trying to transform an established large incumbent bank or enterprise. So the first thing for us, I call it the UP vibe, right? And it's not the brand, the emotional feeling. It's like when people without banking experience come together to, that care about people and care about, customers and respect those customers, and not just customers, by the way. I think about it as people and planet, right? So if you have an ethical value system and you respect the people, then it's really easy to treat them as people and not as a customer. So that vibe, a lot of people will talk about love, you hear marketing stuff and, we love our customers, whatever. It needs to come from within. So, we talk about our team. It's a small team, about 65 people now. When we launched, we were less than 30 people. So that team created a brand, and the brand was created by people that aren't bankers, that don't work at a bank. And so we had an opportunity, like a clean slate, to think about what would we want our bank to be like? How would we like that interaction with our bank? And how would we want it emotionally to feel? And if you can create that feeling, that sort of emotional connection, then we can start a revolution. And our revolution was making money easy. That's what we wanted to do. How do you make money easy for the next generation and the generation after that? And really Up, if you know, in summary, like Up is the culmination of all the different things we do: brand, product, design, financial stuff, technology, engineering, support. Like, it's bringing all those things together. I kind of joke about it when I call it the excellence of everything, because you can't be excellent at everything, right? But it really is the culmination of those things. But the vibe resonates with younger Australians because it's coming from people who aren't traditionally bankers. So I don't think that's something that should be left unsaid, right? I want to get that out up front. But I might just give one or two examples of what Up have done and how that's manifested. So, for example, we thought that customer service amongst banks was pretty poor. And I'm not here to pick on banks. Like, you know, we all use banks, and we are a bank now, right? But you know, we'd work with Bendigo, as I said, for about 6 or 7 years or something at the time, and Bendigo win all the awards for the best customer service. But we felt that the bar wasn't high enough. Like, it's still not good enough. I want to have the same level of support, like if I'm talking to my mates at the pub, or if I'm, getting some sort of interaction and I'm on Facebook or Instagram or what, Snapchat or whatever. So to create that type of feeling, that emotional connection, we created something called Talk to Us. And Talk to Us is embedded in the Up app. And it means that you can reach out to a real human and have a real conversation about your ideas for making the bank better, or your customer support problem, or whatever it is. And it's not a chatbot, and it's not algorithms and AI and machine learning and all that stuff. It's an actual human sitting next to me. It used to be me, like me and Anson. I'll talk about Anson a bit later, I think. But Anson's our chief imaginer, we call him, or our head of product. Anson and I used to literally answer the customer chats when we only had a few thousand customers. We now have a team of 23 people. 23 people for 500,000 customers. If you think about that ratio, Talk to Us has enabled us to have a first response time to customers of less than 3 minutes. So that is an example of how different thinking and a different approach from non-bankers can actually create a customer interaction where the customer doesn't feel like a number. They're not getting a ticket. They're not waiting on hold for half an hour. They're not, waiting days for someone to get back to them. Within minutes, we're getting back to them, and it's probably with a Simpsons meme. So I think that's just one example. I just want to give maybe one more. Is I think being considerate. So all the incumbent banks do amazing things, and none of them like more so than Bendigo. Bendigo have their community bank. They do stuff across 500 different communities, nationwide. Westpac have their chopper and rescue service, and all the banks try to do something, but it's really hard for the younger generation to connect with that and to recognize what that means. So when I say be considerate, what I mean is that the topics that are important to your customers, particularly the younger customers, things like environment, social responsibility, diversity, just the planet, the future, those sort of things that are important to that younger generation, we make them important to us. And by not being part of the investors in fossil fuels, or we work with Google and they're 100% carbon neutral, or as is Bendigo Bank. So those sort of things is actually not just about people not feeling like a number, but creating that emotional connection with people, because it's the same stuff we care about. I call it like an aligned moral compass. Like, if you have an aligned moral compass with your customer, then anything's possible. And whatever it is that you build for your customers is going to resonate, because it resonates with you, and you are your customer. Very hard for a big incumbent bank to be able to do that, but much easier for us to be able to do that when we're starting from scratch.
I love the answer of, if you want to, think about customers being an individual, just literally think about your customers as individuals. Think about your customers as more than just numbers. You're speaking to them directly. And we actually had someone within our team as an Up customer. They sent a request. They said, I've got an idea. And the idea was actually taken on board. They said, yes, this is a great idea. We're actually going to integrate that in the next update. And it's like it's quite a simple thing where you're open to customers' ideas, yet that's flowing through to the bank constantly having updates and improvements, which is kind of an amazing thing where customers feel like they actually are part of the journey with you. They've got an idea and you say, I really like that idea. We'll include that in the next couple of months.
Yeah, that's amazing. That feedback loop with customers and our rapid cadence of delivery, like the way that we are able to, we set ourselves a goal when we started working with Bendigo Bank 10 years ago. And the goal was to do one customer software update a month. Now, that's a big goal for a big bank. And we got there. We're doing more than one a week with them now. But with Up, we set ourselves a different goal. And the goal was to do continuous deployment to customers. So just software updates every day. And we set ourselves an actual practical target, which was 5, right? So we said, could we do 5 software updates to customers a day? And if we did that every single day, then when the customer comes with a great idea, or when we have a great idea or a new product or a new technology gets released or whatever, it can actually just feed into the cadence of the delivery cycle and it comes out really quick. So now instead of like a traditional bank, an idea taking years to go through the pipeline and then get delivered, we can deliver it in a matter of hours, days, or weeks. Like that is an absolute game changer. And we don't actually know many organizations in the world that can do that, let alone in banking.
Do you think part of that comes from you mentioned that there's people from outside the banking industry that are part of Up, and it's, the diverse perspectives that lead to some of these new ideas. Do you think that's the real benefit of having these different perspectives from people who've been in different industries?
I think so. I mean, it's for us, it's definitely an important sort of differentiator. A lot of people are copying things that Up does, and it's hard to copy those things if you don't have that genuine intent, transparency, trust, respect. If you're just trying to make a new thing because everyone else has it, it just feels shallow. It doesn't feel real. And the reason that we've found this enormous connection, I think part of the reason why we found this enormous connection with people is that we're doing it with a genuine intent. And that's been something, in my view, that has not been missing from the banking sector. It is there. Like there's some great, like Regional Australia Bank, or I think the rebranded CUA, is Great Southern, and obviously Bendigo Bank, and there's a whole bunch of great, and ING's another one, Bank Australia. So there's all these banks that have this sort of great intention, but it's been difficult for them to get the momentum or the recognition. So Bendigo have 2 million customers, but nobody knows all the good stuff they do. I say it to Marnie all the time, that actually if there was a way that we could communicate better so that people knew the difference that they're making, I think that's really key. So for Up, we didn't have all that incumbency and sort of that history that we needed to deal with. We just came as a new player. So to get, like you said earlier, to be one of the top recognized brands in banking is, I think, if I say so myself, an extraordinary achievement in just a couple of years.
Absolutely. And I think I've got some RFI data that I think really supports that, which was in our youth banking research. We spoke to 16 to 21-year-olds. So, you mentioned that's quite a key segment for Up as well. And we asked a question, which was, we asked customers to type in, so open-end response, the first bank that came to their mind, and Up came in 10th place. So the major banks were, in the first, 1 to 4 places, but Up actually came in 10th place. So customers thought of Up first. They typed that in as the bank that came to mind first. And I just found that kind of exciting when thinking about, if customers are already thinking about, oh, what's a big bank, or what's a bank in Australia? Up, what does that mean for 2-3 years down the line? So, I mean, what do you make of that stat, and what do you think is really contributing to that level of awareness among this young cohort?
I mean, there's so many things about that. I mean, the first thing I'll say is that we haven't done a lot of work yet in communicating that Up exists. And so to be in the top 10 already is literally extraordinary. The most exciting part for us is that the last few years have really just been launch. The next few years for us is growth. So you can imagine that we're already adding sort of between 500 and 1,000 customers a day. And now we're moving into the growth phase. We want to actually ramp that up significantly. And to ramp it up significantly, we need to get out to a much broader audience. So I think, it's amazing, but it's just really the beginning. Our goal is not to be 10. Our goal is to be number 1. And to be number 1 requires all of the things we've talked about, the vibe, the emotional connection, the respect, the trust, all that sort of stuff, the brand. But it also requires an enormous amount of innovation to do something different than what the incumbent banks have done. So, when you think about the fact that banking in Australia is a solved problem, we do have an underbanked community, or non-bank community, which is a very small community, but generally most adults in Australia, of which there's about 18 million of them, have 3 bank accounts each, right? So you're coming into an established, saturated market. You've got to do something different, not just the same as everyone else, in order to get that adoption. And so for us to get number 1 in the under 35 segment in the next few years is actually going to demand rapid acceleration, innovation, and differentiation from the incumbent banks.
And one of the ways, so you mentioned that Up isn't doing, really specific advertising. There's things you're doing such as the referral bonuses. Do you think the referral bonus is playing a key role in that awareness, or is it just more generally the digital app and, that experience of being a customer who is an individual rather than just a target number?
I reckon that's an awesome question because it's quite insightful. Like our referral bonus is $5. It's like a Coke or a Mars bar. It's not, like we can't compete with the deep pocketed banks. The banks have billions to spend. Our budget in the first, when we launched Up, was like $1 million. Like we had nothing, right? So we can't afford to give away $100 to open an account, or 150 some banks are giving. Or even 25 or $50, it's way, way too much. So when we look at the average cost of acquisition across the industry, this is a bit geeky, right? But if you start thinking about, well, what does it cost us to acquire a customer? And then what does it cost us to retain that customer? Some broad numbers, you guys would know better than us, right? But some broad numbers would be anywhere between a few $100s and $1,000 is how much banks are paying. So if they're giving away a few $100, $150 or whatever to open an account, it's not a big deal to them. To us, we would go bankrupt, right? So we can't afford to do that. And then retaining customers, the average cost to retain a customer in Australia is around a couple of thousand, somewhere between 1,000 and a couple of thousand a year. So again, if we were to outlay that sort of money, we would go bust. So for example, our referral is not intended to incentivize people to come across from another bank. That's never been the intention. We're not trying to create the primary financial institution of the future. That's not been our goal. Our goal is to make money easy. And we know that people already have a bank. So just try Up. And when you try it, we give $5 so that you can actually experience what it's like to use Up. And the dream is actually pretty awesome. The original vision for Up, which wasn't possible in Australia at the time, was if you're waiting in the coffee line at a cafe, which most Aussies do, and it takes you 2 or 3 minutes to get to the front of the queue and pay for your coffee, order your coffee and pay for it. What we'd love is if someone told you when you're at the back of the queue that there was this cool new thing called Up and it was digital bank. By the time you got to the front of the queue, you could buy your coffee. Now that seemed like it was completely crazy because at the time when we thought of that idea, it was taking between 3 and 10 business days to open a bank account in Australia. And even if you could open it online, like CommBank had an online opening, as did ING, you had to wait for the card to arrive before you could put it into your wallet, before you could buy anything with it. So our vision was, could you turn around something that would take more than a week and make it happen in less than 5 minutes, like just even 2 minutes if possible. So we achieved that when we launched about 3 years ago. And it was the first bank in Australia where you could download the app, install the app, get KYC, 100 points of ID, blah, 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 open a bank account, have money in the account because we gave you $5 or you transfer some money in yourself, transfer the money in real time using the new payments platform. And by the time you're at the front of the queue, you literally pay for your coffee in less than a couple of minutes. There are half a dozen banks or so in Australia that can do that now, 3 years later. But when we did it at the time, it was just completely unheard of. So the referral bonus, actually, I'll rephrase it. Referrals account for 60% of our growth, but only 20% or a third of that 60% are paid. Right. So it puts it into perspective that yes, the paid referral is important, but it's a very small token gesture. It's not a huge amount that other banks can afford. And that's not what's driving the growth. What's driving the growth is showing how awesome Up is to your mates at the pub, recommending it to your family and friends. We have an amazing new program that we launched recently called 2Up, which is part of our multiplayer banking strategy. The multiplayer banking strategy is that Up is better with mates, right? That's it. It's just better with mates. There's no other bank in Australia or in the world that we know of where it's actually better with your mates. It's exactly the same experience with any incumbent bank, whether they have one customer or whether they have 10 million customers. So our view is, how do you make it better so that you and your partner, or you and your family, or you and your sports team, or you and your work team, or whatever, how do you make it possible, you and your group of friends, to get a better experience by being more than one person? We call that multiplayer banking, and it's a space that's rapidly evolving. The first version, the first thing we released for it was 2Up. 2Up added to our growth significantly, because what multiplayer banking and 2Up as our joint account, what did 2Up do? It's awesome. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's branded like a computer game. It's all about gamification of banking. You can set up an account and you can blow up the account instantly. So what I say, the way I pitch it is that it's actually targeted at the 90% of people that would never have got a joint account before. Like you and I could get a 2-up, right? And we could just share money with each other if we're going away for the weekend. 5 people going on a camping trip, a sports team, 2 mates, whatever. That's sort of the ideas we want to put into people's heads. So for us, you don't have to be married to get a joint account. You could be roommates, you could be partners, you could be same-sex couple, you could be brother and sister, mother and daughter, whatever. So for us, it opened up the market from a very small slither of people that have ever even thought of getting a joint account to get this amazing, awesome gamified experience for anyone who wants it, right? So that has contributed to our growth significantly. So I just say that, yes, referral is important, but it's the referral that is unprompted and is coming from people's heart. And going back to what we said earlier, that vibe, that emotional connection. I use this thing and I love it so much, so I recommend it to you. That creates the connection and the love, and it also feeds into the longevity. So even though we're not going to create this primary financial institution, what happens is when your mate or your brother or your sister or your mum or your dad or whatever recommends you to this new tool, what happens is you start using it, you realize how awesome it is, and then we get people telling us every day, I'm an upsider for life. So that means that we don't have to sort of woo them away from their incumbent bank. They just try up, they love it so much, they end up putting some of their money in and then a little bit more of their money. And I'll put it into perspective for you. We have seen in the last couple of years, 2.5 years, $8 billion or more than that now. It's probably getting close to 10, but last time I looked at it, over $8 billion in new deposits coming in, mostly from the big 4 banks. So we're no longer just a little neo, sort of ignore us, we're just a little ant. We got 500,000, nearly 425,000 customers, heading towards 500,000. We've done over $40 billion in transactions, like $40 billion in nearly 200 countries. So Up itself started off as just an idea. Now it is actually, like you say, a top 10 recognized bank. It's also a top 10 trusted bank. And it's something that, I think, has a material future. The reason I say that is that it's not like we're just tinkering around the edges. We say to people, try Up, they try it, they fall in love with it. 50% of our customers are active. Now, a lot of banks can say that. 50% of our customers are active, but 50% of our customers are active, and they're active every single day. So on average, our active customers are purchasing, using their Up transaction, their wallet, whatever, more than once a day. Most banks measure that on a monthly basis. How active are our customers? They're doing 1 transaction a month, we'll put a tick. We don't even measure transactions, because if we had measured engagements or transactions, it'd be many, many multiples. We're just talking about simply purchases, more than 1 a day for active customers. Of those active customers, more than 50% of them are what we would call salaried customers, which means that we're not just an afterthought. We are literally the person's core saving bank or core spending bank. They're using Up every single day, on average, more than once a day, and they're putting their salary into Up, or the equivalent of a salary. So they might get paid into a existing incumbent, big 4 bank, maybe CommBank or Westpac or NAB or ANZ, but then they transfer that money straight into Up, and that's where they use it. So I just wanted to give you that flavor that, yes, referrals are an important mechanism, but we imagined the referral as a way for you to tell your mates and get them on board, and for them to experience what it means to be an upsider, not to bribe them to come over to Up.
I love that explanation, because it's important when thinking about $5. You're right. It's not that much money in terms of this is the juiciest, acquisition offer in the market. It's really more about, I've got this bank that I really like. Do you want to try it? It'll be, it'll be a coffee, or, maybe it'll get you half a drink if you're at the pub. And I think it's a great strategy, especially that multiplayer banking idea, because when you're, 15 or 16, you're typically transferring money to the same few people. It's usually, I remember, you transfer every time you'd go somewhere, you'd kind of alternate, but you transfer each other the money. And if you can actually just have a joint account rather than a proper joint account, as in a relationship account, it's a really great innovation when just thinking about how young people are buying things. It might be a small amounts of money they're transferring to each other, but if you can make that really easy, you can gamify it. Why would they go anywhere else if they're having this great experience and all their friends are using a similar bank, or they're using the same bank, and they can actually just do that so seamlessly?
And we're very lucky in Australia. So when we launched Up, we built it natively on NPP using OSCO. So everything was real time. And we had to get an exemption at the time from the NPPA to be able to create a unique identifier that so every upsider, when they signed up, automatically had an account. Now, why did we do that? we did that because all the incumbent banks had already registered everybody's either mobile number or email address. And so, if we were going to sort of get those people to try Up, they couldn't register their mobile number or email address without moving from the other bank, right? Moving their real-time banking from one bank to another. That's a really big ask. So we actually set it up so that every Upsider that signs up gets what we call an Up name. And the Up name is like a handle on social media. So, mine's at Dom or dollar Dom, I call it, right? So you can just send money to dollar Dom and it finds its way to me. You don't need to know my mobile or my BSBN account or my email or whatever else. And so then we found everybody got really excited about securing their Up name. So now we've got people all over Australia that have secured their Up name. We've got one Up name as God, like another Up name, like obviously we tried to get the ones that we could. So I wanted to get Dom. But sometimes as it grows in popularity, you end up getting Jenny 22 or whatever. But we also found that a lot of people like to get their Up name matching their Facebook or their Twitter or their Instagram or whatever, other handles that they use. And it's just so awesome for friends to be able to pay each other in that way. Now, the reason I mention it is that in order to do that previously, before Up launched and made an instant bank account, and then before we launched the idea of an Up name and this sort of stuff, you have to have many different apps on your phone to do all that stuff. So I just say watch this space, because the multiplayer banking strategy is a long-term strategy, and 2Up was the first product that we launched. We recently did requests where you can do money requests, and that's ahead of the NPP, pay, the pay to, the new feature that's coming out, which will be adopted by all banks. But that'll be years away before it gets adopted by everyone, right? So we wanted to launch that. Next for us will be splitting bills, and then there'll be other things coming, like shared accounts and so on and so forth. So it's probably worth saying that we have a public roadmap. So the tree of Up is available for anyone that wants to see everything we've built, everything we're building, and everything we're planning to build. And that radical transparency around a bank was, again, never seen anywhere in the world. Some banks, some of the new banks had roadmaps that they would publish, but nothing like the Tree of Up. The Tree of Up is an interactive way for customers to not only see, but have a say in what it is that we do, but see the context. Why are we doing this and not this other thing that this customer wants? What's the context? Why are we doing that? And you can see in the branches of the Tree of Up that the multiplayer banking strategy is pervasive right across the tree in all different aspects. And so over the coming years, you'll see all sorts of awesome features that we release that makes banking with your mates even better.
I think the idea of transparency as well is really key when thinking about Up's longer term growth, because post-Royal Commission, RFI research has really shown that customers want transparent banking. They want to know what fees they're being charged. They want to know the rates, and they want to know why. They want to know what banks are doing. And I think it also ties in with feeling like an individual rather than just another number. And having the growth plans that are transparent, I think, is a really great idea for customers who go, this is kind of interesting. I want to look into this bank because it's, I haven't heard of it before. Maybe if we think about the youth segment, maybe their parents look up and they go, oh, I haven't heard of this bank. Then they have the information they can look at, which is quite, I think, a good way to think about, getting customers comfortable or even just excited about what's to come.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, just to jump in when you mentioned that is that we think that one of the reasons that Up is in the top 10 of recognized banks already is because it's the first bank that young people are choosing that isn't their parents' bank, right? So we all have a bank when our parents set up bank accounts for us, and they nearly always set it up with the big four banks. And sometimes depends where you live; it could be a regional bank or whatever. But everyone has a bank account. Your parents do it for you, or you get a Dolomites when you're at school or whatever. But when you grow up, you want to make that decision yourself. It's like buying your first car or having your first kiss. I don't want to make it sound too awesome, but it is, right? And it should be awesome. It's a decision that you're making for yourself. It's part of your independence. It's part of your personality. And so for you to be able to choose your bank, it's actually something that a lot of people don't think is that important, but I think it's absolutely critical. And for us to see that people are choosing Up as their first bank means that we've started, that's our first kiss. Like we've started that relationship. And then beyond there, we can deliver all the awesomeness that we deliver. And that's where we can actually, create a relationship with Upsiders. And over time, we'll add, new things as well. But I think that the trust that we've been able to create and the ethical alignment that we can create with not just customers, but also our partners like Bendigo and others, it goes to who we are. And then the features that we release are just almost, icing on the top of the cake.
Do you think, so you mentioned that, young people choosing their own bank, and I think that conscious choice can also tie in with retention, like you mentioned, because it's that milestone. And, we know that customers, when they take out their first account, often it'll be, maybe their parents set up an account when they're a kid, but when they take out their first account and they choose that, it's because they want independence, or they're earning their first income from their first job, or they want to start making payments rather than their parents giving them pocket money, whatever it might be. It's that step towards independence. And the idea of them deciding Up as their bank, I think is a really great one. But I think a good question to know would be, do you think parents will remain central to this decision-making process in, for future generations to come? Or do you think it's going to become easier and easier for young people to just choose the banks they want, look up the information themselves, and, take out an account that suits them rather than one their parents are comfortable with or the parents have recommended?
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, right? But I can tell you my perception is that it will be the same as, getting your first apartment or buying your first car. Like, for some people, their parents will be a critical part of that. And for other people, they will do the opposite of what their parents suggest because they're rebellious. So I think Up is probably more aligned with the rebellious, disruptive innovation sort of mindset. So I think at the moment, we see a massive portion of our new customers choosing us as their first bank and doing it on their own merits, not doing it because it's their parents or that their parents said they should do that. So I don't see a great need for us to target parents, for example. But I will say this, Up is for everyone. Like, we don't build Up for kids or build Up for adolescents or build Up for a particular demographic. We don't have the perfect Up customer and put it up on a whiteboard and then say, right, how do we target them? That's just not how we work. We go back to those ground roots, that vibe. If we want to make banking easy for all Australians, it just so happens that resonates with that younger audience. But our customers are aged up to 100. Like, about a third of our customers are sort of sub I think 20 something, 22, let's say sub end of university. And then in the mid tier between, say, 22-ish and 45-ish is about another third, and then another third beyond that or whatever. So I know it's 50% for sure is less than between 16 and 25, but it's sort of like you can imagine that there's also older people using Up, and actually they love it just as much as the young people. They're just probably not, they don't know about it yet. Like, what happens, we found, is that when one young person finds out about something, they post it on Instagram, they send it to their mates on Snapchat, they put it on Facebook, they jump into a forum and they start chatting about it, whatever, and it just spreads really quickly. Or maybe they send it to a WhatsApp group or whatever. It just spreads real quick. The older audience is tending to take their cues from traditional media, reading the newspaper, watching TV, listening to the radio, that sort of stuff, and not as much in social media. Now, that's, again, a gross generalization. There's a lot of older people on social media too. but definitely we've found that when one person says, this is amazing, this is awesome, it just spreads through that network really quickly. And that's why about 60% of our growth is referral based.
I think on the idea of, customers recommending Up to other friends, especially if we're thinking about, 16 to 25-year-olds, to what extent do you think, if we think about financial literacy, which is a topic I find really important when thinking about growth in the market as well, do you think that having more open discussions among young people about banking products and financial decision-making can have some sort of, some positive impacts longer term? Because customers, instead of, I have a bank and I don't really talk about it, they're having more dialogue about what their needs are, what their goals are, and how their banking products can suit those needs. Do you think there's a bit of a shift in the market in terms of those open dialogues?
1,000,000%, right? Financial well-being, financial literacy, understanding money, reconnecting with money, whatever you want to call it, yep. That sort of movement is something that we literally are spearheading. So in Australia, around the world, there's all sorts of others doing it, but right in Australia, we are challenging the status quo and providing ways for people to have those discussions. So I mentioned 2Up a few times. I'll put it into practical terms, right? 2Up was created exactly for the reason that you just described. Like, money is hard to talk about. It's especially hard in the early stages of a relationship. It's really hard if it's your roommate or it's your brother or it's your business partner or whatever. And so it's a very tricky sort of segue from first date or living together or being siblings or whatever to talking about money. Like, how do you actually do that? And what Up does is give you this awesome, fun, engaging way to do it, right? So the new kind of sort of joint account that we developed, you can set it up, shut it down real quick. It's so awesome that we get messages from customers. We get thousands of messages every day from customers. And we get messages from so many 2Up customers saying to us, oh my God, it's unbelievable. I'm talking to my partner about blah. I'm talking to my brother about blah. My mum and I are now talking about money. We've never talked about it before. People say to us all the time as well, I've never been able to save money. Like, we have 2Up savers where both parties are unrestricted, able to add money and take money out. Now, we don't have a multi-auth, multiple, approvals and all that sort of complicated crap that you get with a sort of traditional joint account. This is based on trust. This is based on both parties agreeing that they're going to share a pool of money. And it could be a couple of people, a couple of friends going away for a camping weekend and wanting to have $200 available to both of them so they can buy, I don't know, sausages and beer. So the idea of reinventing what a joint account is, it opens up relationships, it opens up the ability for people to talk about money, and all of that's happening in a fun, safe and friendly environment. So, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I know that if we were having this conversation on a panel with a whole bunch of bankers, you get a very, very different answer, but it is actually insightful. It's the reason that we created 2Up, and it's the reason that the multiplayer banking strategy will be critical for Up over the coming decade, because everything we do is about helping people understand, reconnect, talk about, feel comfortable with, and have fun with their money. And even little manifestations like when you put your money into a saver, and it works with 2Up savers too, it's digitally represented as what we call a savers pool. And you can move your phone around and the gravity engine on your phone will actually show you your money. Now, it might sound like a gimmick. And when we pitched it as an idea internally, we all sort of were laughing and joking and thinking as we began. It's turned into something extraordinary. For the first time in the digital world, we've created a tangible connection between people, humans, and their money. Because digital money is something that just slips through your fingers. It just disappears. Like, where is this digital money? Now suddenly you can see it and you can feel it. Like, the phone vibrates when the emoji sitting in the pool of money hits the side of the phone. And it really, you can see it filling up. The saver you can see filling up with the savings pool. It sounds like a gimmick to people who don't know it or don't get it, or let's say bankers, like, traditional bankers. As soon as you experience it and you feel it, especially if you're young, you're like, oh my God, this changed my life. And I think that is, goes to the point that you're saying, is that if you can change someone's life, help someone change their behavior, help someone understand and have fun with their money, I think it's the future. And I think that we are resonating with the younger audience today, but that is applicable across generations. Everyone in the world wants that. And it's a very, very difficult thing for a bank to do. Try and inject yourself in between two different humans in a conversation about money. Very difficult thing to do. We've done it superbly and done it digitally and made it fun.
So exciting thinking about how money can almost be demystified, and just thinking about how can, because I think sometimes money, especially when you're, starting to develop savings, it's, you don't know if you want to talk about it, or it's, you've got roommates, but money's always a bit of a point of tension. And I love that idea of it's actually open dialogue. It started a mum and daughter talking more about money more comfortably, or even an early couple, maybe they've moved in together, but they're still in an early stage of their relationship. They don't want to take out, maybe they just want to be able to pull some money together to see, maybe they're saving up for a TV or whatever it might be. But that tangible view where you can see your money, it's not just a number, it's, it's money. It kind of gives you that mental click of, okay, I'm actually working towards more than just bigger numbers. I'm working towards more money. I just think that's really exciting. And it sounds simple, but you can also see when thinking about all the decisions that would have gone in behind the scenes, just how much work's gone into making money more fun and more, easier to talk about, because you can have these back and forth conversations through the app. You can see your money grow, and you can, pull money together with different relationships and different friendship groups and different people in your life.
Yeah, 100%. One other crazy example is that when we designed the support experience for our joint accounts, 2Up, we thought, well, if you're in a 2Up, you're in a relationship and you're both jointly dealing with money, you actually want it to be a group chat. You don't want to be talking to the support person, the other person at Up, about the money that the other person is not part of that conversation. And it's inspired by your WhatsApp or your iMessages or your Facebook group or whatever. Like, it's inspired by that, but it's applied to money. And so for the first time ever, you can now be having a chat with your bank, and your partner, your 2Up, is part of the conversation. So I was, when we first came up with this idea, I was testing it, and my wife was like, what the hell's going on? I keep getting these alerts that, because I'm just talking to someone. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And it opens the dialogue. Like, suddenly you're at dinner or you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix or whatever, and you're having a conversation about money. It just wouldn't have happened before. And so I just think that again, it's a unique manifestation, but nobody else has ever done it. And so it's a simple thing, But those simple things sometimes are the real magical things.
I love that. I think it's a really great topic to end our discussion on today when thinking about just the future growth. And I would love to finish our discussion today with any kind of predictions you have for next year, or any kind of what do you see in the next couple of years, either for the future of UP, the future of youth banking, both? What are your predictions for the year to come?
I think it's a reasonably hot area. The global pandemic has changed people's idea about how digital can disrupt, right? Because we're doing this Zoom, people are interacting in a digital way that they haven't before. And it's definitely seen that happen in the banking sector. So I think there's probably a couple of things. For me, genuinely seeing the customer first, not just saying, oh yeah, well, we think about the customer whenever we think about doing new things or whatever, but imagining the future for customers and what the possible outcome for them could be. Anson, who I mentioned earlier on, I call him our chief imaginer, sort of our head of product. It's his job. He's like a futurist. It's his job to imagine the future of banking. That's it, right? And him and I have been working on this together with the rest of the team and stuff for nearly a decade. And so we live and breathe the future. And so having the customer first, I think that's really important. The other one is for it to be fun. Like there's no good, like we've seen a lot of people talking about financial wellness, financial literacy, financial well-being, all that sort of stuff. And everybody has a different way to solve that problem. And I think it's great that everyone's doing it. We've heard a lot of people talking about diversity. We've heard a lot of people talking about environment, like talking about all those things and then actually doing it is different, right? So there's like, having the customer first, it needs to be tangible. And then thinking about the future, you've actually got to do it. And I think that having financial wellness and financial well-being and everything, and having programs to help with that and support services and everything, that's like baby steps. That's step one. Making it fun, you can encompass all of that in the engagement, in the experience. And so I think that's probably, we'll see definitely more of that from UP. Whether we see more of that from others, I don't know. Like I said, people love to copy what we do. One of the things we like about that, we take solace in the fact that when people are copying us, they can't beat us, right? So that's fine. Yeah, I think there are probably a couple of things. And then the other thing for us is more cross-pollination across industries, right? So seeing people who have, let's say, the other way to think about it is software disrupting or eating the world, right? You hear that from famous people in the software space, is that every company is a software company. The number one car company in the world, the number one retailer in the world, the number one everything is a software company now. So I think that seeing that cross-pollination, that it's not just about money, it's about purchasing, it's about retail, it's about travel, it's about all those different things. You're going to see the convergence of those different things. And money is literally just the currency that makes those things happen. It's an enabler. And same with technology. Technology is just a tool. It's just an enabler to make that stuff easier, more engaging, and more fun.
What a great topic or note to end on, prediction for more fun, which I think that's what we need: more fun in banking and more ways to engage, more ways to not have that sense of dread when you look at your bank account, because it's just giving you that, okay, money is stressful, but at least I've got this way I can interact with it. So thank you so much for all of the, everything that you've spoken to us about today, and your perspective, because I think there's a lot of really exciting work that UP is doing, and I really can't wait to see what else comes out in the next year. Of course, I'm sure there'll be some exciting developments, but also longer term, I think there's a lot of amazing things that are soon to come. So thanks so much for being part of this discussion today.
No worries, Anna. It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for your great questions.